such a militarily steps up in the military exchange between the two countries that included joint maneuvering and exchange visits. We are targeting to develop the military dialogue between the two sides. So we have a very strong to boost the military cooperation between the two countries through cooperation between the governmental enterprises and government will see that such a cooperation will be strengthened in the future. We've signed with my dear colleagues upon the end of such a meeting through and time minutes of the meetings through which we've achieved the roadmap. We are going to continue to communicate with Egypt with respect to the regional issues and have already tackled the conditions in Gaza. Hamas showed its desire and will in order to take positive steps to secure the ceasefire, and we also should this be implied to Israel. We call it upon to lift all the obstacles that hinder the flow of the humanitarian aids in order for Egypt to flow such an humanitarian aid without any obstructions. We thank Egypt for delivering such a humanitarian aid through Gaza. Today, load trucks of 1,200 of humanitarian aid moved into the Al Arish port. We are going to exert all potentials in order to provide all the available opportunities of sheltering. Soon we'll witness the reconstruction conference to take place in Cairo, through which will support the required support with respect to the Gaza governments and other issues. All this will be working in order to have an issuance of a resolution by the United Nations. There is a dire need to clarify the details with respect to the instability force to govern Gaza. Also, political and legal framework should be set out clearly. We, along with the relevant parts, along with Egypt, will continue to hold meetings with each other. It is a must for the United or the international community to remember that the Palestinian governance should be in the hands of the Palestinian Authority. This is our stance, and if we do so, other issues should be solved. While we discuss such matters, we should not able to manage to talk about the conditions in Libya. We also have a very much concern to have a stability in Libya, and will take all the necessary steps to be made by the Libyan leaderships and to be monitored by the United Nations. With respect to the Middle East, we wish to have a vision of such a region to be stabilized. All the relevant parties should have a full respect, and we have a goodwill of such a context. We've talked of my colleague upon the conditions in Sudan. Our stance in Sudan is similar of Egypt and Laos. Through continued clashes in Sudan that would cause more concern for us. Such clashes should be halted. Such strikes taking place against civilians in Sudan, we should work altogether to preserve the unity and the stability of Sudan. I've already talked with my dear colleague concerning the deterioration conditions in Syria, and we think that Mr. al-Shar's visit to Washington constitute a breakthrough. We are very much concerned that Syria has already joined the international alliance or coalition to confront ISIS. We are going to seize all the opportunities for Syria to move forward. We wish to see a free terrorism, Syria, and an integrity of its territories. Turkish and Egypt pursues and endeavors are going to continue to serve security and peace in the region. With this context, we'll see a joint cooperation is generating tangible results. I thank my dear friend Mr. Badr Abdelati. I thank the relentless efforts exerted by each one, and I give the floor to him. For the most compassionate, I thank very much my dear brother, His Excellency Mr. Hakan Fidan, the Foreign Minister of Turkey. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like in the outset to convene to the Turkish and people and leadership my dearest condolences from the Egyptian government and Egyptian people upon being deceased according to the aircraft crash that took place yesterday, and we pray to the Almighty God to have them fully blessed and and send their families to the condolences. I, in the outset, I wish to thank and appreciate my dear friend Mr. Hakan Fidan for the warm reception, and I would like to express my pleasure to visit Turkey for the second time and meeting with His Excellency Mr. President Mr. Recep Tayyip Erdogan, through which we've discussed all of the international, regional issues of joint concern, as well as holding the meeting of the joint planning in its first meeting that targeting to elevate the bilateral ties to broaden horizons. It is a great pleasure that's my visit to Ankara to go inside with the celebration of the two friendly countries of the 100th anniversary of the establishment of the diplomatic relations between the two countries that we have since history joint work to establish the principles of peace and stability. I congratulated my brother for Mr. Hadan, and we intend to grant the Turkish government a replication of scriptures of the first king, the third Hatib, to be in place in the very prominent area in Ankara as an embodiment of the most prominent relations between the friendly two countries. There's no doubt such a deepest history of the ties between the two countries to push the bilateral ties due to the importance paid by the two leadership of the two countries. The Joint Strategic Council was established, presided by His Excellency President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi and Mr. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, and its first round was held in the 4th of September in Ankara by the presence of the two presidents. We look forward to convene the second edition of the high-level elevated strategic council by the presence of His Excellency Mr. Recep Tayyip Erdogan. And we've held a very positive meeting through the proceeding of the first meeting of the joint planning group by the participation of senior relevant authorities between the two countries who've expressed through which the mutual trust of exchanging such a collaboration during the upcoming period throughout all the relevant authorities of the two countries. We've also discussed the significance of continuing the joint work to implement the directives of His Excellency President Abdel Fattah Sisi to lift up all the trade exchange to 15 billion US dollar, in addition to foster a very relevant environment of investment and to work upon to bolster the Turkish investment in Egypt, as we are very pleased of the current level of the Turkish investment, yet we still look forward to booster such a level in different levels, such as energy and the maritime shipment and the linkage of the Turkish-Egyptian port, as well as supporting all types of joint cooperations. Ladies and gentlemen, who've addressed through our talks the latest development with respect to the Palestinian cause, either in the Gaza Strip or in the West Bank, following the successful efforts of the relevant parties in reaching an agreement in Sharm el-Sheikh in halting the hostilities in Gaza, as we've agreed upon in the significance of the joint work in order to bolster such an agreement and to secure a ceasefire and to work to move forward to implement the second phase of the agreement, and not to give a chance of escalation once again, and reiterated the Egyptian-Turkish vision on the necessity of implementing the two-state solution and the establishment of an independent Palestinian state on the line of the forces of Jinn and its eastern Jerusalem as its capital according to the international conventions. And also we've tackled the negotiation taking place in New York upon the U.S. project exerted effort to formulate such a resolution according to the international reference through which to clarify and affirm and laying down and specific terms of the entities to be established, either with respect to the Stability International Force and other forces, and I've already invited my brother, Mr. Fidan, to join an international convention of the early reconstruction to be hosted by Cairo within the upcoming weeks to mobilize the efforts, international funding, to escalate to execute the project regarding the early reconstruction in light of the great devastation in this enclave, and on the importance of the preservation for keeping the Palestinian people on the land and their right to rebuild the infrastructure that was devastated, as we affirmed the full rejection of all policies that targeting to impose the status quo and the full rejection of all the annexation activities and to horrify civilians in the West Bank, who also reaffirmed the categorical rejection of any harming the Palestinian rights and affirming to reject all the unilateral practices and the violation of the historical and legal violation to the occupied Jerusalem. We've also discussed with Mr. Minister Fidan the latest development in Syria, and with this context, we fully support the integrity and the unity of Syria, and we look forward to have Syria within a very effective role in the framework of the Islamic Arab nations and within the international community that will be implemented effectively through the comprehensive political process in addition to confront the terrorism in order to fulfill the aspiration of the Syrian people. We've also discussed upon achieving peace and security in Libya by supporting all efforts made by the national Libyan institutions, and we look forward to escalate to put an end of the current divisions and to convene the parliamentary and presidential elections and to guarantee the exiting all the mercenaries and also in Libya. And we also talked on the issues so in Sudan, as well as we've agreed upon on the necessity of the ceasefire and the great importance to maintain the unity of Sudan, and the integrity of its territories, and reject all attempts to divide Sudan, and with giving full support to regain peace and stability. And I've already informed Mr. Minister Khan to continue Egyptian efforts, particularly my visit date into Port Sudan, honored to meet with President Burhan, as we've agreed to an immediate ceasefire, launched the comprehensive political process, particularly in the light of the deterioration of the humanitarian conditions, along with the conditions in the African Horn and the Red Sea, and tackled the issues on the international level, as the international arena witnessing an unprecedented challenges, including the Ukrainian crisis and its repercussions on the energy security. And we've agreed upon in reaching a political settlement. Our talks reflect on a very joint agreement, and we've agreed upon to continue bolstering our joint work throughout different issues. And I conveyed the greetings of His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi to Mr. President Erdogan, along with an invitation to join the meeting of the strategic council between the two countries. To conclude, I thank Mr. Minister Khidan by firming to continue the joint coordination to push the bilateral relations and achieving a settlement and de-escalate the conflicts faced by the regional arenas and the international arena. And thank you very much. United States, through your talk, you've tackled the conditions in the notion of Syria. What are the development you are expecting to with this context? Particularly, some media personnel have talked previously on such a meeting in the White House, describing them that are positive, along with Mr. al-Shara's meeting with Mr. Trump. Did you have any chance to join to such a meeting? And through such a meeting, we've expressed the Turkish vision of along with the United States and Syria, how could you solve out such problems? How for us to achieve all these issues? They are very important issues. President Trump shows a very much concerned, describing the meeting as a very positive step, particularly in light of the sincere steps as the international community is working to have a successful Syrian administration and to work that such an administration would not impose any threat to any neighboring countries, along with the cooperation with other countries. I've already expressed the visions of the Turkish president to Mr. Trump. Along with the following meeting that took place, we've saw that we've met with his the deputy president, such as Vance, along with Mr. Rubio. And if we wish to brief the meetings, we've already addressed the Syrian issues with full details in another trilateral meeting that included the three foreign ministers, followed by the meeting by Trump and al-Shara, that followed by a very in-depth and detailed meeting with respect to the issue with the security issue between Israel and Syria. We've agreed upon to have a very determination to the borders between the two countries, and we've also addressed the issue of Druze, the north issue, and we think that they are trying to make a very constructive role in order to reach a very stable Syria. We are waiting on a very potential resolution to be issued by the Security Council concerning the establishment of the anticipated forces to be formed. Such an international meeting with Mr. Woodcock, through which we've tackled the issue in Ukraine and how possible for Ukraine and Turkey to play in a very pivotal role with this context, and also to have another meeting with Syria in order to have a settlement of its issues. And we've also discussed the matters in the issue of the ceasefire agreement in Gaza. We had discussions with relevant issues. It was a very fruitful half day in the United States with all parties, through which we explored all the visions that concern Turkey and the United States. My questions for you, both foreign ministers, with respect to the securing the ceasefire agreement. What about the latest development along with the draft to be presented before the UN Security Council? What are the logistic guarantees with this regard? And other steps should be taken by Egypt and Turkey with this regard. Thank you very much. Egypt and Turkey participated in the meeting that took place in New York with President Trump, along with Islamic and Arab, these countries, along with Egypt and Turkey, support Trump's plan to achieve peace in the region and ending the war on Gaza. Thanks to President Trump's effort, we've reached a ceasefire meeting, and now we hope to work on securing such an agreement, and we've reached such a meeting with a joint supported by Egypt, Turkey, and the United States, along with Turkey. Without all these countries, wouldn't have reached such a breakthrough. Now we should work on to secure such an agreement. We should focus in also in securing the flow of great quantities of the humanitarian aid, and to work on the withdrawal of the Israeli occupation forces from the enclave, and followed by the execution of the second phase of President Trump's plan. There is a consensus between Egypt and Turkey, along with the Arab Islamic countries, with this regard. Now we are focusing in New York on the new proposal presented by the United States, through which we discuss the articles of such proposals that will be very significant, that should be very carefully and accurately be formulated in order to determine the governance of the anticipated forces established, in order not to have a very reliable resolution to be implemented on the ground. We are continue to communicate with our friends in Turkey and the United States, including the relevant countries such as China, European countries, all talking about the formulation of the anticipated proposal, and we hope to have a consensus to be issued very soon in order to deploy the international forces and their main mission to monitor the ceasefire agreement execution, in order to affirm the commitment of both parties, which is very significant, wouldn't be achieved without the presence of the international forces, along with very clarified and determined competences and authorities, in order to enable to deploy the forces. Dialogue will be continue with our friends in the United States. As I mentioned, we hope in reaching a very quick agreement of the framework of such a proposal. And thank you. With respect to the humanitarian issues, as you all know, that the Egyptian Red Crescent, along with the NGOs in the region, they are very important in securing the flow of such an humanitarian aid. Turkey is paying a very much concern with this regard, as we've used to with our cooperation with Egypt, and have already tackled with my friends in order to transform such a cooperation to be in a very institutional framework, and to also discuss another issue, which is working on to have a very permanent ceasefire. How would we guarantee such a step, along with the communication group to be established, as we long worked on such a mission without any um, obstruction, and how would for the UN to join such a cooperation with this countries, along with the cooperation with the United States, how do we work in supporting such efforts? Also, through the Washington meeting that was in a very pivotal um, turning point, such as Egypt made several meetings with the American parties in order to secure a very permanent stability, not only in Palestine but in the whole region. And there was also a discussion regarding several issues through which, in order to work on and executing these two-state solutions, that would require a different trajectory of rhetorics, along with the cooperation with the Islamic countries Council, and I cannot count all these results, but we've been always cooperated as brothers, as we were in belief that we are standing to by the just and the right. And if we continue with this regard, we won't have any hinders. We'll continue to cooperate, and we understand that such problems and issues will work on to have a settlement of such escalated problems. So both together we are going to confront through a very professional and joint coordination and collaboration presided by the two presidents of the two countries. As our president expressed his desire to execute such effort with yesterday's meeting, as well as today's meeting, we've witnessed in a very continued discussions in other issues such as energy and trade in order to fulfill the aspirations of our two people. So once again, I thank your presence. Another question from Archie in Arabic. Thank you very much. My question directed to His Excellency Minister, Egyptian Foreign Minister, Your Excellency, Egypt exerted all the effort to secure a ceasefire agreement to end the genocide war in Gaza Strip. In the future, what is Egypt's priority specifically with this issue and its following steps in order to achieve such priorities? Thank you. Certainly, we are in Egypt, so we are moving to the full support and coordination with our friend and brotherly countries, on top of which Turkey. Our priorities are very clear. The first priority, there is no doubt, to work upon to secure the ceasefire agreement and to stop the idea of resuming the war once again, that would seem impossible, and to have a permanent established ceasefire that should have a mechanism in order to implement such agreement. And the following step is deploying the international forces, but within the authorities and a very specific mandate to maintain peace and not to impose it, which is very important to highlight. The third priority, to continue to the flow of the maximum quantities of humanitarian aid into the clave. We should not say, or we should say, is just to have the Gaza Strip to fully observed by the humanitarian aids, and to have a very practical embodiment of the full linkage between the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. These two territories are Palestinian, through which we should reaffirm the national unity between the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. And the following priority: we are approaching the winter season. We should escalate the efforts of reconstruction, entering the medical assistance. We have mostly 170 injured with a serious injury that they cannot be treated by the traditional means. They are required for a surgical intervention. And to enter the basic needs ranging of the clean water to the safe shelters in order to have a full protection for the people and civilians within the upcoming winter, and followed by political horizons through which the embodiment and the establishment of the Palestinian state as the only alternative in achieving a very sustainable and permanent peace and security in the regions and country, including Israel.